I, 62, F. Always believed that family was a harbor, a safe place to dock your ship when the seas of life got rough. My late husband, Robert, used to say that. He was the captain of our little family, and for 40 years, he steered us through every storm. When he passed away last year, the storm that hit was one I thought I might not survive. The silence in our house was a crushing weight. The emptiness on his side of the bed was a constant, aching reminder of my loss. My children, Mark and Sarah, were my anchors in that grief. They held me steady, reminding me that even though our captain was gone, the ship had not sunk. To honor Robert's memory and to try and find a new way forward for all of us, I decided to do something he had always dreamed of. He wanted to take the entire family on a grand cruise. All of us together, his children and his grandchildren, making memories on the open water. He had a specific cruise line he loved, one he'd followed since it was just a small company with big dreams. So I took a considerable portion of the money he had left me, the money we had saved together for our golden years, and I booked the trip of a lifetime. It was for his birthday, a celebration of the man he was. I booked 3 of the best suites on the ship, one for me, one for my daughter Sarah and her family, and one for my son Mark and his. My daughter Sarah was thrilled. She understood the sentiment immediately. She knew how much it would have meant to her father. She helped me with the small details, excited for her 2 boys to experience the adventure. My son Mark was also happy, at least at first. He told me it was a wonderful idea, a beautiful way to remember Dad. But then his wife, Tiffany, got involved. Tiffany has always been particular. She is a woman who measures worth in brand names and price tags. Our family's quiet, comfortable life was never quite grand enough for her. She saw my tribute to Robert not as an act of love, but as an event to be managed, a social opportunity to be maximized. The first sign of trouble came a week after I made the bookings. My phone rang and it was Mark. He sounded hesitant, his words carefully chosen. "Mom, Tiffany was just looking at the cruise itinerary," he started. "She has some really great ideas to make it even more special." I knew what was coming. This was how it always started. A gentle suggestion from Mark, acting as a buffer for Tiffany's demands. "Oh," I said, keeping my voice light. "What sort of ideas?" He cleared his throat. "Well, she thinks the dinner reservations you made are a bit traditional. She found a specialty restaurant on board that has a celebrity chef. It's an extra charge, of course, but she thinks it would be a much more memorable experience." I had specifically booked the main dining room because Robert had loved the classic, formal atmosphere. It was part of the memory I was trying to preserve. "That's thoughtful of her, Mark," I said carefully. "But your father and I always loved the main dining room. It's part of the tradition I wanted to share with the grandkids." There was a pause. I could hear Tiffany whispering in the background. Mark's voice came back, a little more strained. "I know, Mom. But Tiffany feels that things should be a bit more modern. She said she could handle changing the reservations, so you don't have to worry about a thing." I felt a familiar prickle of annoyance. It wasn't about me worrying. It was about her taking control. "Thank you, but I'm happy with the plans as they are," I said firmly. "This trip is about honoring your father's memory, and I'd like to stick to what he would have loved." The conversation ended awkwardly, and I was left with a sour feeling in my stomach. It was a small thing, a dinner reservation, but it felt like the first wave of a much larger tide. A few days later, Tiffany called me directly. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she was about to ask for something she knew she shouldn't. "Amelia, darling," she began. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I was just doing a little research on the cruise, and I noticed the shore excursions you picked are very historical. I had chosen a walking tour of an old city and a visit to a museum, things Robert would have adored." "Yes," I said. "Your father-in-law was a great history buff." She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Of course he was. But the kids, Amelia, they'll be so bored. I found this amazing private beach club with cabanas and bottle service. It would be so much more fun for everyone." "Tiffany, I am paying for this trip," I said, my patience wearing thin. I chose activities that I thought would honor Robert's spirit. I heard her take a sharp breath. Her sweet tone vanished. Well, there's no need to be rude, Amelia. I am just trying to help. This trip is for the whole family, not just a memorial service. Mark agrees with me. He thinks we should have some fun too. I felt a pang of hurt at Mark's name. He wasn't standing with me. He was standing with her. If you and Mark would like to book a different excursion for your family, you are welcome to do so with your own money, I said, my voice colder than I intended. She hung up on me. That evening, Mark called again, this time to tell me I had upset his wife. He said I was being rigid and that I needed to learn to compromise. She's part of this family now, Mom, he said. I felt my heart break a little. I know she is, Mark, I whispered. I just wish she remembered that you were part of it first. The weeks leading up to the cruise were tense. Tiffany stopped speaking to me directly. Instead, she would send her suggestions through Mark, or worse, post them in the family group chat she had created. There were links to designer resort wear, articles about the ship's most exclusive, high-cost amenities, and photos of other families on lavish vacations. Each post felt like a little jab, a reminder that my simple, heartfelt plan was not up to her standards. Sarah saw it too. She called me one night, her voice filled with frustration. Mom, you need to shut her down, Sarah said. She's trying to hijack Dad's trip, I sighed, feeling weary. I'm trying, sweetie. But every time I say no, Mark gets upset, and I feel like I'm pushing him away. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You're not pushing him away, Mom, she said softly. He's letting Tiffany pull him away. There's a difference, she was right, of course. But that truth didn't make it any less painful. A month before we were due to sail, Tiffany did something that crossed a line from annoying to deeply concerning. I had all the cruise documents, passports, and confirmations in a large folder on my desk. Tiffany came over with Mark and the kids for Sunday dinner. While I was in the kitchen, she went into my office, a room she knew was private. She came out holding the folder. Amelia, I was just looking at these, and it's all a bit of a mess, she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. I can organize it all for you. I'm great with paperwork. I'll put everything into a neat binder, make copies for everyone. It will be so much easier for you. I felt a surge of protectiveness over the documents. It felt like she was trying to take the last piece of control I had. But Mark was standing right there, beaming at his wife's supposed thoughtfulness. That's a great idea, Tiff, he said. It would be a big help for Mom. I looked at my son's hopeful face, and I felt trapped. If I said no, I would look ungrateful and paranoid. So, against my better judgment, I agreed. Thank you, Tiffany, I said, forcing a smile. That's very kind of you. She took the folder, and I felt a sense of dread settle over me. I had just handed my enemy the keys to the castle. I had a terrible feeling that I was going to regret it. The day of the cruise finally arrived. The air at the port was thick with salt and anticipation. Families were bustling about, their laughter echoing in the vast terminal. I felt a flutter of excitement myself, pushing aside the anxiety that had been my constant companion for weeks. This was for Robert. I would not let Tiffany's games ruin it. Sarah and her husband, Tom, were with me, and their 2 boys were practically vibrating with energy. We found Mark, Tiffany, and their children near the check-in counters. Tiffany was dressed in a white linen pantsuit that looked like it cost more than my first car. She greeted us with a brilliant, false smile. There you are. We were getting worried, she said, though she looked anything but. We got in line, and the mood was festive. The kids were pointing at the colossal ship visible through the terminal windows. Even Mark seemed relaxed, free from the tension of being caught between his wife and me. When we reached the front of the line, a cheerful agent greeted us. Welcome aboard. Passports and booking confirmation, please, she said. Tiffany stepped forward immediately, handing over a sleek, leather-bound portfolio. I have everything for the family right here, she announced, giving me a pointed look. I watched as the agent scanned their passports. Mark, Tiffany, their kids. Then Sarah, Tom, and their boys. Everything went smoothly. Then it was my turn. I handed the agent my passport. She scanned it, and then frowned at her screen. She typed something, her brow furrowing. I'm sorry, ma'am. she said, looking up at me with confusion. I don't seem to have you on the manifest for this sailing. My blood ran cold. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The booking is under my name. Amelia Gable, the agent typed again. She shook her head. No, imsuri. I have the other members of your party, but your name isn't here. There is no ticket for an Amelia Gable. Sarah stepped closer to the counter. That's impossible, Sarah said, her voice sharp. My mother booked and paid for this entire trip, the agent offered a sympathetic smile. I'm sure it's just a mix-up. Do you have a confirmation email or a booking number? Before I could even open my purse to find the printout I had insisted on keeping, Tiffany stepped forward, placing a hand on my arm. Her touch was cold. Her face was a perfect mask of concern, but her eyes held a triumphant glint that chilled me to the bone. Oh, Amelia, this is just awful, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I bet I know what happened. She turned to the agent, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. We had to make some changes to the booking a few weeks ago. I was upgrading our cabins as a surprise for everyone, and I bet her reservation was accidentally canceled in the process. These booking systems can be so tricky, she turned back to me, her smile tight.
I am so sorry, Amelia.
You're not on the manifest, the words hung in the air, a death sentence for the trip I had poured my heart and soul into. Mark looked pale and shocked, his eyes darting between me and his wife. Sarah's face was a thundercloud. And in that moment, seeing the flicker of victory in Tiffany's eyes, I knew. This was no accident. This was a deliberate, calculated act of cruelty. She had done this on purpose. My mind was reeling, trying to process the sheer audacity of her claim. An accidental cancellation? An upgrade surprise? It was a story so flimsy, so transparently false, that it was insulting. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, and I had to grip the edge of the check-in counter to steady myself. The cheerful noise of the terminal faded into a dull roar in my ears. All I could see was Tiffany's perfectly painted smile and the cold, hard satisfaction in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought she had successfully cut me out, leaving me stranded and humiliated while she and my son sailed away on a vacation paid for by my late husband's legacy. What do you mean, you upgraded the cabins? Sarah demanded, her voice cutting through my shock. She took a protective step in front of me, shielding me from Tiffany. Tiffany's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. I just want to do something nice, she said, her tone defensive. Amelia had booked lovely rooms, of course, but I managed to get us all into the concierge level. It's a surprise for the whole family, Mark finally found his voice, though it was weak and uncertain. Tiff, you should have told us. I don't understand what happened. I looked at my son, at his confused, troubled face, and a fresh wave of pain hit me.
He didn't see it.
He didn't see the malice his wife was radiating. He just saw a problem, an inconvenience, and his first instinct was to smooth it over, to avoid a confrontation. Let me see the booking confirmation, I said, my voice low and shaky. I was fighting to keep it from trembling with rage. The one you used to check in. Tiffany's hand fluttered to her expensive handbag. Oh, it's all digital now, you know. It's on my phone. The agent has everything she needs. We really should get on board. The lines are getting long. She tried to steer the family away from the counter, away from me. No, I said, and this time my voice was firm. It was the voice I used when my children were young and had truly crossed a line. Mark and Sarah both stopped and looked at me. We are not going anywhere until I see that confirmation. Tiffany's eyes narrowed. The mask of concern was slipping, revealing the ugly sneer beneath. Amelia, you're making a scene, she hissed. The check-in agent was looking increasingly uncomfortable, speaking quietly into her radio. Perhaps you could step over to the guest services desk, ma'am, she suggested to me. They might be able to help you sort this out, but I knew that was a dead end. If my ticket was canceled, guest services couldn't just invent a new one. This was Tiffany's plan all along. To create a bureaucratic nightmare that I couldn't solve before the ship sailed, leaving me behind with a pat on the arm and a fake promise to call me from the first port. I ignored the agent. I ignored Tiffany. I looked directly at my son, Mark. "Mark," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Your wife is claiming she changed a booking I made and paid for. In doing so, my ticket has vanished. I need you to ask your wife to show me her phone with the booking confirmation on it." Right now, Mark looked like a trapped animal. He glanced at Tiffany, whose expression was now one of pure fury, and then back at me, his mother, who he could see was deeply hurt and on the verge of righteous anger. "Tiff, just show her the phone," he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. "Let's just clear this up. I don't have to show her anything." Tiffany snapped. "It's my phone. This is a private matter. She's probably just confused. Maybe she forgot to confirm her own ticket. At her age, these things happen." The personal jab, the insinuation that I was senile, was like a splash of cold water to the face. The shock receded, and in its place, a cold, hard resolve began to form. I was done being the polite, accommodating mother-in-law. I was done letting her walk all over me to keep the peace with my son. This was war. I took a deep breath. "I am not confused," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I have a printout of my original confirmation in my purse. But that's not what I need to see. I need to see the confirmation of the changes you made, Tiffany." I held her gaze, refusing to look away. Because if my ticket was canceled, the money for my suite, a very expensive suite, would have been refunded. "I want to know where that refund went." The color drained from Tiffany's face. She hadn't expected that. She had expected tears and confusion, not logic and accusations. She had underestimated me. That was her first mistake. It would not be her last. I needed to think, to get away from the prying eyes and the mounting pressure. "Sarah," I said, turning to my daughter, "take the kids and get on the ship. Find her cabin. Don't let them miss a moment of this." "Tom, please go with them," Sarah started to protest. "Mom, I'm not leaving you here." "Yes, you are," I insisted. "I am not going to let her ruin this for my grandchildren. You will get on that boat, and you will have a good time." "That is an order." I gave her a look that she knew meant there was no room for argument. She hesitated, then nodded, her eyes filled with worry. She hugged me tightly. "I love you, Mom. Call me the second you sort this out." I watched her lead her family away, a small, defiant group moving toward the gangway. Then I turned back to Mark and Tiffany. "You two should probably board as well," I said, my tone now completely devoid of warmth. "You wouldn't want to miss the boat." Tiffany looked relieved, eager to escape. She grabbed Mark's arm. "Come on, Mark. Your mother needs some space. We'll talk to guest services from the ship," but I wasn't finished. "Before you go," I said, stopping them in their tracks, "I have one more question. Tiffany, when you were helping me organize my paperwork, did you happen to make a copy of my driver's license and the credit card I used for the booking?" Her face went rigid. It was not an accusation, just a simple question, but we both knew the weight of it. She didn't answer. She just stared at me with pure hatred in her eyes. Then she turned and pulled Mark away, disappearing into the crowd heading for the ship. I was left alone at the check-in counter, the sympathetic agent still watching me. "Ma'am, I really think you should go to guest services," she repeated gently. I gave her a small, tired smile. "Thank you, but I don't think they can help me." I stepped away from the counter and found a quiet corner of the bustling terminal. My hands were shaking, but my mind was surprisingly clear. The initial shock and hurt were coalescing into a single, sharp point of anger. She had used my trust. She had used my grief. She had used my love for my son against me. And she had done it all for what? A better cabin? A bit of money? The petty cruelty of it was staggering. I sat down on a hard plastic chair and pulled out my phone. First, I called my travel agent, a lovely woman named Carol who had helped me plan every detail of the trip. I explained the situation. Carol was horrified. She pulled up my file immediately. "Amelia, this is awful," she said, her voice tight with anger on my behalf. "Let me see.
Oh my.
Your reservation was indeed cancelled. It was canceled 2 weeks ago. My heart sank, even though I knew what she was going to say.
How?
I asked. How is it canceled? Carol was quiet for a moment as she read the notes. The cancellation request came in via email, she explained. The email address is very similar to yours, but one letter is different. An O instead of an A. It's easy to miss if you're not looking closely. My mind flashed back to Tiffany in my office, holding my folder of documents. She had everything she needed. My name, my booking number, my email address. It would have been trivially easy for her to create a fake email account and impersonate me. What about the authorization? I asked. Didn't you need to verify it was me? The email included a scan of your passport identification page as proof of identity, Carol said, her voice heavy with regret. And the refund was processed back to the original credit card, as is our policy. With that information, our agent at the time processed the cancellation. Amelia, I am so sorry. This is a clear case of fraud.
Fraud.
The word hung in the air between us. It was no longer just a family squabble or a case of a difficult daughter-in-law. It was a crime. Tiffany had committed a crime against me. Carol, I said, my voice hardening. Can you tell me if any new bookings were made for the same cruise around the same time by a Tiffany Gable? There was a flurry of typing on the other end of the line. Let me check.
Yes.
Here it is. A booking was made on the same day your cruise was canceled. 2 penthouse suites, adjoining. And several onboard credit packages were purchased. It was all paid for with a new credit card, of course. She had canceled my suite, waited for the substantial refund to hit my credit card, and then used that money to fund her own lavish upgrade. She probably paid my credit card bill online with the refunded money, so I would never even see the transaction. It was a sophisticated, malicious plan. I thanked Carol for her help and ended the call. For a moment, I just sat there, the phone heavy in my hand. The terminal was emptying out. The final boarding call echoed through the hall. The ship was about to leave. Tiffany had won. She was on that ship, in a penthouse suite paid for with my money, and I was stuck here. The despair was a physical thing, a weight pressing down on my chest. I thought about Robert. I thought about how he would have handled this. He would have been furious, yes, but he wouldn't have let it defeat him. He would have been calm, strategic. He would have found a way. And that's when I remembered. Robert had always believed in having a backup plan. And he had left me with one, a very powerful one that I had almost forgotten about. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a second phone. It was an old, simple flip phone, not a smartphone. It was the phone Robert had used for his most important business contacts, the ones he didn't want mixed up in our daily life. He had given it to me before he passed away. Keep this, Amy, he had said. You'll probably never need it. But if you ever find yourself in a real jam, a situation where the normal rules don't seem to apply, the numbers in here might help. I hadn't touched it since he died. I flipped it open. The small screen glowed to life. I scrolled through the contact list. There were only a dozen names. Bankers, lawyers, old business partners. And then I saw the one I was looking for. David Lang, CEO, Odyssey Cruise Lines. My husband hadn't just been a fan of the cruise line. He and David's father had been friends in the early days. Robert had been one of the very first angel investors in the company, back when it was just 2 ships and a dream. His initial investment had been modest, but he had never sold his shares. Over the decades, as the company grew into a global giant, that small investment had grown into a significant stake. We were not just customers, we were owners. Tiffany had no idea. To her, I was just Mark's quiet, old-fashioned mother. She had no concept of the life Robert and I had built before she came into our family. My finger hovered over the call button.
My heart was pounding.
This felt like a monumental step. It was one thing to confront Tiffany and the family. It was another thing entirely to bring the full weight of corporate power into it. But she had left me no choice. She had declared war. She just didn't realize I had a secret weapon. I took a deep, steadying breath and pressed the button. The phone rang twice, and then a calm, powerful voice answered. David Lang speaking. David, I said, my voice a little shaky. This is Amelia Gable. Robert Gable's wife. There was a moment of silence, and then his tone warmed considerably. Amelia. My goodness, it's been too long. I was so terribly sorry to hear about Robert's passing. He was a great man. How are you doing? His genuine kindness almost made me cry. It was such a stark contrast to the cold cruelty I had just experienced. I'm getting by, David. Thank you for asking, I said. Listen, I'm sorry to call you on your private line, but I find myself in a rather difficult situation. I quickly and concisely explained what had happened at the terminal, how my ticket, booked for the Odyssey of the Seas, had been fraudulently cancelled by my daughter-in-law. As I spoke, the warmth in David's voice was replaced by a cold, sharp anger. She did what? He said, his voice dangerously low. Amelia, that is not only unacceptable, it is illegal. You are one of our company's most valued stakeholders. To have you treated this way is unthinkable. I could hear him typing furiously on a keyboard. I'm pulling up the ship's manifest right now. Gable. Yes, I see the original booking. The owner's suite. And I see the cancellation. And here are the new bookings. 2 penthouse suites under the name Tiffany Gable. Paid for with a credit card that was used only moments after the refund for your suite was processed. The audacity is breathtaking. He paused, and I could practically feel his fury radiating through the phone.
Amelia, I am so sorry.
This is a massive failure on our part that this was allowed to happen. We will be conducting a full investigation into how that cancellation was processed. But first, we're going to fix this. The ship is scheduled for departure in 15 minutes. I am putting a hold on that right now. It will not leave the port. I was stunned. David, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do, he said firmly. No ship of mine is leaving port with the wife of Robert Gable standing on the dock. Now, I have a few questions for you. First, what do you want to do about your daughter-in-law and her family? I can have them escorted off the ship by security this instant. We will press charges for fraud. I thought for a moment. Having her thrown off the ship in disgrace was tempting. It was the clean, simple solution. But it felt too easy. She would spin a story, play the victim. She would twist it to make me look like the cruel, vindictive monster. Mark would be caught in the middle, and our relationship, already so strained, might be severed forever. No, a public humiliation was not what I wanted. I wanted something more personal. I wanted justice, not just revenge. I wanted her to understand the gravity of what she had done. And I wanted my son to be forced to see his wife for who she truly was, without any ambiguity or excuses. David, I said slowly, an idea forming in my mind. I don't want them thrown off the ship. There was a surprised silence on the other end of the line. You don't, he asked. No, I said, my voice gaining strength as the plan solidified. I want them to stay. I want them to remain on board for the entire duration of the cruise. David was clearly confused. Amelia, I don't understand. After what she did. Oh, they'll stay, I said, a grim smile touching my lips for the first time that day. But they won't be staying in the penthouse suites. I have a different accommodation in mind for them. David, can you give me access to the ship's full cabin roster? I need to see what's available. He laughed, a short, sharp sound of appreciation. Amelia, you sound just like Robert right now. He always preferred a scalpel to a sledgehammer.
Consider it done.
I'm sending you a secure link to the ship's internal systems right now. You'll have full purser-level access. You can see everything and change anything. What's more, I'm reinstating your booking, but not for the suite you originally had. I'm putting you in the chairman's villa. It's our largest and most luxurious residence on the entire ship. It's usually kept empty for my family or our board members. This week, it's yours. A personal escort will meet you at the VIP terminal entrance in 5 minutes. They will bypass all the lines and take you directly to your suite. I was overwhelmed. David, that's too much. It's not enough, he said firmly. Robert helped build this company. The least we can do is treat his family with the respect they deserve. Now you go and pick out a new cabin for your daughter-in-law.
Take your time.
The ship will wait for you. He ended the call, and a moment later, a text message appeared on my phone with a secure link. I clicked on it, and the entire ship's layout appeared on my screen. Every deck, every cabin, every passenger manifest. I had complete control. I scrolled down, past the luxurious suites, past the balcony rooms, past the ocean view, and interior cabins. I kept scrolling down to the lower decks, the ones not shown on the glossy brochures. I scrolled down to the crew quarters. There, tucked away in the least desirable part of the ship, deep in the hull next to the engine room, were the smallest, most basic cabins. Tiny, windowless boxes with bunk beds and a shared bathroom down the hall. They were reserved for the lowest-ranking contract workers. I found two that were empty. Cabin 1138 and Cabin 1140. I smiled. It was perfect. With a few taps on the screen, I accessed Tiffany's booking. I saw the two lavish penthouse suites she had stolen. I highlighted them. Then I dragged her name and Mark's and their children's from those beautiful rooms at the top of the ship all the way down to the bottom. I reassigned Tiffany and Mark to Cabin 1138. I put their two children in the adjoining Cabin 1140. Then, I took a moment to look at the onboard credit packages she had purchased for herself. The spa treatments, the private cabana rentals, the unlimited premium beverage package. I canceled them all. Every single one. The system asked me where to redirect the refund. I sent it all to Sarah's onboard account as a little surprise for her and her family. Feeling a sense of profound, righteous satisfaction, I closed the phone. A man in a crisp white uniform approached me. "Mrs. Gable?" he asked with a polite bow. "I'm the chief purser. I'm here to escort you aboard." I stood up, my back straight, my head held high. The despair was gone, replaced by a steely determination. The game had changed. Tiffany thought she was playing checkers. She was about to find out I was playing chess. And I was ready to call checkmate. The walk from the terminal to the ship felt like a dream. The chief purser, a kind man named Mr. Harris, led me through private corridors and up special elevators, completely bypassing the crowds and the noise. He didn't ask any questions. He simply treated me with a quiet, profound respect that was a soothing balm on my raw nerves. When he opened the door to the chairman's villa, I gasped. It was larger than my first house. There was a sprawling living room with a grand piano, a dining room that could seat 12, a massive private sundeck with its own hot tub, and two enormous bedrooms with bathrooms bigger than most city apartments. It was opulent, almost absurdly so, and it was all mine. "Your daughter and her family have been moved to the adjoining suite, Mrs. Gable," Mr. Harris said. "And we've taken the liberty of redirecting all of your original dinner reservations and shore excursions to your new booking. Your personal concierge will be here shortly to assist with any other needs you may have." He gave me a small, knowing smile. "I believe your son and his family have also had a change in their accommodations. I've been instructed to inform them personally once they are settled," I nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Harris. That will be perfect." He bowed again and left me alone in the palatial suite. I walked out onto the private sundeck. The ship's horn blew a deep, resonant blast, signaling our imminent departure. Below me, I could see the last of the ropes being cast off. We were moving. I was on board. And somewhere, deep in the bowels of this very ship, my daughter-in-law was about to receive a very unpleasant surprise. I sent a quick text to Sarah. "I'm on board. Everything is fine. Better than fine, actually. Meet me in suite 14001." A few minutes later, she knocked on the door. When I let her in, her jaw dropped. She stared at the vast suite, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom, what is this? How did you?" I explained everything. The phone call to David Lang, his history with her father, the access he had given me, and the new arrangements I had made for Tiffany and Mark. As I spoke, a slow smile spread across Sarah's face. By the time I finished, she was laughing, a real, genuine laugh of pure delight.
"Oh, Mom.
"That is brilliant," she said, hugging me. "Dad would be so proud of you. He always said you were the tough 1 inch." We sat together on the sundeck, sipping champagne that had been left for me, and watched the land recede into the distance. It felt good to have my daughter by my side, my ally. We talked for a long time, Not about Tiffany, but about her father. We shared memories, we laughed, and we cried a little. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The tribute to Robert had been sullied, but it had not been destroyed. It had just changed. Now, it was also a tribute to the strength he had always seen in me. After a while, I decided it was time. I pulled out my phone and sent a text message to Mark. Problem solved. I'm on board. Meet me in your cabin so we can talk. The number is 1138 inch. I deliberately kept it simple. I wanted them to walk into the trap with their eyes wide open. I could picture Tiffany seeing the message, feeling a surge of annoyance that I had somehow managed to get on the ship, but confident that she still held all the cards. She would assume I had been given some small, last-minute cabin and that I was coming to them, the residents of the penthouse, to plead my case. The arrogance of it was almost laughable. Sarah and I decided to take a walk. I wanted to be near their new suite when they discovered it. We took the elevator down to the lowest passenger deck, and then we found a discreet staircase marked crew only. We slipped down into the service corridors. The atmosphere changed instantly. The plush carpets were replaced with linoleum tiles. The soft lighting was replaced with harsh fluorescent strips. The air was filled with the hum of the ship's engines. It was a different world down here. We found a small alcove near the corridor where cabin 1138 was located, a place where we could see without being seen. We didn't have to wait long. We heard their voices before we saw them. Tiffany was complaining loudly. I cannot believe we have to walk this far. Why did they put the penthouses on a deck that requires a service elevator? It's ridiculous. Mark's voice was placating. I'm sure it's just a shortcut, Tiff. We're almost there. They rounded the corner and stopped dead. Their luggage was piled up in the narrow hallway outside a small, metal door marked with the number 1138. There was no grand entrance, no polished wood, just a painted steel door. Tiffany stared at it, her face a mask of utter confusion. This can't be right, she muttered, checking her phone. This is at the closet. Just then Mr. Harris, the chief purser, appeared as if on cue. He approached them with a neutral, professional expression. Mr. and Mrs. Gable, he asked. Yes, Mark said, looking relieved to see a member of the staff. There seems to be a mistake. Our bags have been delivered to the wrong room. We're in the penthouse suite. Mr. Harris consulted a tablet in his hand. Ah, yes. There has been a change to your cabin assignment, he said, his voice perfectly level. Due to a booking irregularity, your party has been reassigned. This is your new cabin, number 1138. And your children are next door in 1140 inch. Tiffany let out a sound that was halfway between a gasp and a shriek. Reassigned? What do you mean, reassigned? I booked the penthouse suites myself. This is unacceptable. I demand to speak to your manager. Mr. Harris did not flinch. I am the chief purser, madam. All cabin assignments are final. Your new key cards are in the slot on the door. If you have any further issues, you may take them up with the passenger who authorized the change. Tiffany's head whipped around, her eyes scanning the empty corridor. What passenger? Who authorized this? And that was my cue. I stepped out from the alcove, Sarah right behind me. I walked slowly toward them, my heels clicking on the linoleum floor. I stopped a few feet away and gave them my sweetest smile. I did, I said. The look on Tiffany's face was something I will treasure for the rest of my life. It was a chaotic storm of shock, disbelief, fury, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine fear. She stared at me as if I were a ghost. You, she stammered. You can't. How did you? Mark was just as stunned. He looked from me to the tiny cabin door and back again, his mind clearly struggling to connect the dots. Mom? What is going on? What is this place? He asked, gesturing to the grim corridor. This is your new home for the next 7 days, Mark, I said, my voice calm and even. It's a crew cabin, a significant upgrade from being left stranded at the port. Wouldn't you agree? Tiffany finally found her voice, and it was filled with venom. You did this. How could you do this? We had the penthouse. I paid for it. No, Tiffany, you didn't. I corrected her gently. I paid for it. You just stole a refund from my suite to book it. That's called fraud. It's a crime. I had a very interesting conversation with the CEO of this cruise line. He was quite keen on having you arrested and escorted off the ship in handcuffs. Mark went pale. He turned to his wife, his eyes wide with horror. Tiff, is that true? Did you cancel my mother's ticket? Tiffany's face crumpled. The arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by a desperate panic.
No.
She's lying. She's a crazy old woman who's trying to ruin our vacation, she shrieked, her voice echoing in the metal hallway. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply took out my phone and held it up. On the screen was the email chain from my travel agent, clearly showing the fraudulent cancellation request from the fake email address. Then I swiped to the next screen, which showed the ship's official booking log, courtesy of David Lang. It showed the exact time my suite was canceled and the exact time her penthouse suites were booked, with the funds flowing from one to the other. The evidence is all here, Tiffany, I said softly. The cruise line has it all. They know what you did. So does my son. The only question now is, what are you going to do about it? Mark sank onto one of the suitcases, his head in his hands. I can't believe you, he whispered, his voice cracking. He wasn't speaking to me. He was speaking to his wife. Tiffany stared at the phone in my hand, the proof of her deception glowing in the dim light. She looked trapped, cornered. All the fight went out of her. What do you want from me? She whispered, her voice hoarse. Want? I asked, feigning surprise. I don't want anything from you. I've already gotten what I wanted. I'm on this cruise, in a beautiful suite that you could only dream of. My daughter and her family are here with me. We are going to have a wonderful time honoring Robert's memory. I paused, letting the words sink in. You, on the other hand, have a choice to make. You can stay here, in this cozy little room. You can spend the next week living like the lowest-ranking crew member, eating in the crew mess hall, with no access to any of the amenities you thought you were entitled to. You will watch my family enjoy the trip that I paid for, and you will know that you are here, in this box, because of your own greed and cruelty. I looked at her, my eyes cold as ice. Or you can get off. The ship is making a technical stop in Nassau tomorrow morning for a few hours. You can disembark there and make your own way home. The cruise line will not stop you. But if you do, you will have to explain to everyone, to all our family and friends, why your grand vacation ended after just one day. The choice is entirely yours. I turned to my son, who was still sitting on the suitcase, looking utterly broken. Mark, you can stay with her, or you can join your family. But if you choose to stay here with her, understand that you are choosing her lies over your own mother. And that is a choice you will have to live with long after this cruise is over. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away. Sarah gave Tiffany one last look of withering contempt and followed me. As we walked back toward the elegance of the passenger decks, I could hear Tiffany start to sob, a mixture of rage and self-pity. It was not a pleasant sound, but I felt no sympathy. She had made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. The first night of the cruise was surreal. Sarah, her family, and I had dinner in the main dining room at the exact table I had originally reserved. It was a beautiful, circular table with a view of the ocean. We raised our glasses to Robert, and for the first time since he died, it felt like a true celebration of his life, not a somber memorial. The chair where Mark should have been sitting was empty. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. I didn't know if he and Tiffany were still on the ship, or if they were packing their bags to disembark in Nassau. A part of me, the mother in me, was worried. But a larger part of me knew that this was a battle he had to fight on his own. I had spent years trying to protect him from the consequences of his wife's behavior, and all it had done was enable her. The next morning, I was woken by the gentle Caribbean sun streaming through the panoramic windows of my villa. I went out onto my sun deck and saw the turquoise waters and white sands of Nassau. The ship had docked. I watched the first tenders carrying passengers to the island, wondering if my son and his family were among them. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. Can we talk? Alone. My heart leaped. I texted back. I'm on my private sundeck. Suite 14,001 inch 10 minutes later, he knocked on my door. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he looked like he hadn't slept at all. He walked past me into the suite, his eyes scanning the opulent surroundings with a dazed expression. "This is your room?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "The CEO of the cruise line is an old family friend." He was very unhappy about what happened. We stood in an awkward silence for a moment.
He wouldn't look at me.
He just stared out at the view. "She told me everything," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "She admitted it. She canceled your ticket. She stole the money. She was going to leave you at the port." He shook his head, a gesture of profound disbelief. "She said she did it for us. For our family. So we could have a better experience, a more luxurious trip. She said you wouldn't have approved the expense, so she took matters into her own hands." "And do you believe that?" I asked gently. He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were filled with tears. "No," he whispered. "She did it for herself.
For her pride.
To be in control. To show you that she was the one who mattered now." He took a shuddering breath. "We fought all night. I've never seen her like that. She was vicious. She said this was all your fault, that you'd always hated her, that you were trying to turn me against her." I stayed silent, letting him speak. This was his moment of reckoning, and I would not interfere. "I told her she had to apologize to you," he continued. "I told her she had to beg you to change the cabin's back. She refused. She said she would rather die than give you the satisfaction. She started packing her bags. She said we were getting off the ship in Nassau." He paused, and his next words were heavy with significance. "I told her she could go.
But that the kids and I were staying.
I told her that I was done choosing her over my own mother. I was done making excuses for her. I was done." I felt a wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled my knees. It was the moment I had been waiting for years. My son was finally seeing the truth. "So, she's gone?" I asked. He shook his head.
No.
That's when she broke down. When she realized I was serious, that I would actually let her walk away alone. She fell apart. She begged me not to leave her. She promised she would change. She said she would do anything. He looked at me, his expression pleading.
"Mom,
I don't know what to do. I love her. She's the mother of my children. But I can't live like this anymore. I can't live with the lies." I walked over to him and put my arms around him. He was still my little boy, in so many ways. He hugged me back tightly, and I could feel the years of tension and unspoken resentment melting away. "You don't have to do anything right now, Mark," I said softly, stroking his hair. "For the rest of this week, you're on vacation with your family. Your real family. You and the kids will move into the suite next door with Sarah and Tom. We will have dinner together every night. We will go on the shore excursions I planned. We will honor your father's memory together. As for Tiffany, she made her choice. She can stay in that little box and reflect on her actions. What happens after this cruise is over is a decision for another day. But for now, you are here with us. You are home." He nodded, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "Okay, Mom," he whispered. "Okay." The rest of the cruise was a revelation. With Tiffany confined to her self-imposed prison in the crew quarters, Mark blossomed. He was the son I remembered, funny, kind, and engaged. He played with his children and his nephews, he laughed at dinner, he shared stories about his father. It was as if a dark cloud had lifted from him. The grandchildren were blissfully unaware of the drama, simply happy to have their father, their aunt, and their grandmother all to themselves. We explored ancient ruins, we snorkeled in crystal-clear water, and we spent long, lazy afternoons by the pool. It was everything I had dreamed the trip would be. We saw Tiffany only once. Sarah and I were on our way to the spa when we saw her in one of the main corridors. She was trying to argue with a bartender who was refusing to serve her because her cruise card showed she did not have a beverage package. She looked haggard and pale. Her expensive clothes were rumpled, and her perfectly styled hair was a mess. She saw us watching her, and her face contorted with a look of pure hatred. She opened her mouth to say something, but then she seemed to think better of it. She turned and stalked away, disappearing into the crowd. She didn't look glamorous or powerful. She just looked small and pathetic. I felt nothing.
No anger, no pity.
Just a vast, empty indifference. She no longer had any power over me or my family. On the final night, we had a celebratory dinner in the specialty restaurant, the one Tiffany had wanted so badly. David Lang had insisted, a gift from the cruise line. The food was exquisite, the service impeccable. At the end of the meal, Mark stood up and raised his glass. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, his voice clear and strong. "To my father, who taught me what it means to be a good man. And to my mother, who taught me what it means to be a strong one. Mom, I am so sorry for everything. Thank you for this trip. Thank you for everything." We all clinked our glasses. It was a perfect moment, a healing moment. When the ship docked back at our home port, the disembarkation was as smooth as our arrival. A special escort met us and whisked us through customs. As we waited for our luggage, I saw Tiffany across the terminal. She was standing alone, her face pale and drawn. She was watching us. Our eyes met for a long moment across the crowded hall. I gave her a small, polite nod, the kind you would give a stranger. Then I turned my back on her and walked away, toward my children and my grandchildren. I didn't know what would happen with her and Mark. I knew he had a long and difficult road ahead of him, but that was his journey to take. My journey was to continue living, to continue honoring my husband's memory, and to continue protecting the family we had built together. I had faced the storm, and I had steered my ship through it. The harbor was safe, and the future, for the first time in a long time, looked bright and clear. The cruise was over, but I knew the lesson Tiffany learned would last a lifetime. She had learned that you do not mess with a matriarch who has the CEO on speed dial. She finally learned what it feels like to be powerless. And I had learned that I was stronger than I ever thought possible. Robert would have been very proud indeed.